Welcome, everyone. This is the Independent Center podcast. I am your host today, Daniel Ratcliffe, alongside
Rebecca Michael.
All right, and today we are going to talk with an individual. Let me just give a little background. One day, I was in my office at the Independent Center, and an individual had scheduled a meeting with me. And when this individual came into my office, I must say, I was highly impressed and proud to be an individual with a disability.
Nice.
This individual has overcome barriers that you would not believe. He is a doctor, number one. Let's throw that out there. He earned that.
Geneticist.
A geneticist?
Yeah, geneticist, not
Yes.
a doctor.
Yes.
Nice.
He's a
like,
geneticist.
don't ask me about being an MD.
Yes.
Different doctor.
Yes, let's get it right. He is a geneticist, which to me is a step above a medical doctor.
Of course.
Couple of steps. So, but without further ado, let me just throw this out there. Not without further ado, let's introduce Dr. Matthew Weed. Thank you so much for being here today.
Well, thank you for having me, Daniel.
Oh, it's no
and
problem.
Rebecca.
Yes.
No problem. So we're just gonna jump right into it, Matthew. I want you to give them a little bit of background of who you are and where you come from, and what brought you to the Independent Center.
So, I grew up in Colorado Springs.
He's a native like me.
Went to William Palmer High
Two for
School.
one. We got a 2 for 1.
And after graduating from Palmer in '89, I went back east to Yale for college, political science.
You don't just speed by that. Run that back one more time.
I went back east to Yale for college in political science. And then I stayed back east and got a master's in public affairs from Princeton. I then went up to Harvard for a year and got a master's in genetics. And then I went back to Yale to get my PhD in genetics. Then I did some postdoctoral work in bioethics and medical education, still at Yale. I was the first assistant director for the $150 million Wisconsin Institute for Discovery, which was launched at the University of Wisconsin-Madison in 2010, along with two other organizations that were housed in the same building in a public-private partnership. Interestingly enough, called the Wisconsin Institutes for Discovery, which of course led to all kinds of mass confusion everywhere we went.
No, I'm confused.
And then I went back to Yale for a while to do some research. I was briefly out in California, had some struggles at a university out there, and that's actually what brought me back home. The reality is, those of us who have disabilities know that occasionally working full-time and having a disability full-time can be too much of a full-time job.
Yeah, definitely.
And that was very much what was happening to me out there, because not only am I blind, I'm also a very brittle type 1 diabetic. And I've been a type 1 diabetic since I was 1, and I was born with congenital cataracts, so I could see a little bit when I was a baby, but by the time I was about 8, I couldn't see at all either. And so working full-time and dealing with my medical situation full-time and all the logistics that went behind that. I've worked with well north of 1,000 students who came by, who were scheduled and organized to do my meds, because there is no technology until very recently for someone who can't see to check blood sugar. Right. How are you going to stick your finger and get that little itty-bitty drop of blood onto the equally little itty-bitty test strip to get an accurate reading? Yeah. The insulin draw, yes, there are pens, but they are not as safe and accurate as having somebody hand draw it. Yes. So somebody had to come by twice a day to do that. Plus, we usually had somebody coming by at lunch to do at least a glucose check. So 1,000 students later, that was how I did all those things, was those students would come by, and I had a volunteer system. Mm-hmm. One of the things I'm working on now is trying to build that model out into a home visit program for pre-health and health profession students, so that they can learn what it's like to be disabled or old or whatever, and have extra needs that your average 20-year-old college kid isn't going to have and may well not have been exposed to.
Right. And Matthew, let's just say, like, so a million questions are going through my mind as you describe your journey, which is an incredible journey. I just have to say, how did you end up going to Yale?
Yes. Tell us the story.
Through your disability.
Yes.
You know, what were some of the challenges and what were some of the solutions that you found to make your way to Yale?
Well, we were, I'm fortunate that a lot of my family roots are on the East Coast. Okay. So there was a thought to go back east for college well before I finished high school. We did the quote unquote East Coast tour that a lot of people do. Yeah. And Yale, we just had an incredible relationship that we built with the admissions officer that I interviewed with there. And, you know, you never know when you leave, of course, but we had a pretty good feeling. And sure enough, when March 15th rolled around the next year, we'd gotten a fat package, because they still sent fat packages at that point. They didn't send email. And so out we went. My mother came out with me, you know, and Yale was smart about things. They put me in the residential college, which is what they call their dorms. They put me in the residential college that was closest to the university health service. Okay. The health service did the meds at first, because you're not going to train students right away, or at least so we thought at that point. Okay. We actually did get to the point of training students on a crash basis when I went to Princeton. And we just, you know, we learned, you always learn things as you go forward. Mm-hmm. And we learned that no, Mom could not stay in wherever I was going to be going to the next degree for 4 days. Yep. She was in Princeton for almost 2 weeks. Yep. And she, being a teacher, she actually told her students the first day of school, this is the only day you're going to see me until pretty much the middle of September. Right. And so they had a really good sub, and Mom came out to Princeton, and that's what we did. But at Yale, we started with all the tools of the trade in 1989. We were having students tape books on audio cassettes, and that was being coordinated by the Yale Resource Office on Disabilities. Slowly but surely, we moved to having the students do my meds, because they could do the finger stick and the insulin draw, which then I would do the actual shot, and then they could just walk with me across the courtyard to meals, because talk about a place that's not very accessible for somebody who can't see. A dining hall is a complete mess.
Oh, yes, I am sure.
So they would be with me as much as anything to protect everybody else in the dining hall. Forget protecting me. So that was kind of how we started to progress on that, because if I had to go up to the health service, the nurses there were awesome, but the reality is they had other stuff they had to do. Yeah. I was losing an hour and a half a day to just tripping up to the health service, having the nurses run around as fast as they could so that they could take care of me, and then go back and then get to the dining hall, and then the dining hall staff had to find somebody to help out. So having students come and visit, that was great. Right. Readings, we went from audio tapes, and in fact, on my YouTube channel, I have a great video from my friend Victor, who is now very senior in the technology universe out in California. He came up with the idea in 1989 to use an optical scanner and the fastest Mac we could lay our hands on to convert books into audio format, into electronic text that my computer could then read. We were maybe not first, but we were certainly second or third or fourth in the country on that. And the other thing that Victor did that was really brilliant was he made sure that it was a student usable system, so they didn't have to pay full-time employees to do that work, which a lot of other schools were doing at that point. So the students would just come and they would be coordinated and they would do the scanning, and then I would get a disc and it's like, Matt, here's your reading for political science for next week.
Awesome.
It was brilliant.
So you were at the forefront of digital or audio books for the individuals that needed those accommodations.
Yeah.
And so I'm hearing a lot on your part of advocating for yourself. For our listeners that may be about to pursue a collegiate career, what would be your suggestion as far as preparing for that, for our students that may have a disability that they don't really know where to go for accommodations. They don't really know how they're going to be successful. And I'm sure that we've all been at that point at some point in time. So what would be your advice to those individuals?
Let me say that I was very fortunate that I was at a place where they had a lot of money. And so with a lot of money, they could resolve things in much more personalized ways than many schools do. Okay. That said, if you're going to college, you want to get in touch with the college's office for students with disabilities. There'll be a million different names that they go by. And you'll want to do that if you're going this fall. You want to go you want to be in touch with that office as soon as you decide where you want to go. Yeah. You want to call them up. They need to be like the second call you make after saying, yeah, I'm coming. And unfortunately, nowadays, a lot of schools are using computer programs to basically kind of decide how much accommodation you need. Yeah. That is a question of staffing. It's a question of resources for a lot of colleges. But obviously, you can still go in and talk to the director or the associate director or whoever and say, I need more than this, or I don't need this, but I do need that. Yeah. You know yourself better than they do. Yeah. You won't know the college the way they do. And they're going to be able to help you find resources that can maybe help you or in ways that you're not going to know for a year.
Gotcha.
At least.
Yeah. So with that being said, so we've covered the college piece and your education. Let me ask, after college, this is a question that a lot of people want to know, is after college, what was it like seeking employment for you?
It was tough. I had a pretty overt double disability. I chose to express that in my cover letters because if I got to the interview stage, they were going to find out because I was traveling with somebody. Yeah. Somebody still had to do my meds. Right. Somebody had to be the sighted guide. Right. So for me, it felt better to say something. For a lot of people with disabilities, it's not so obvious that that's a concern. And if the employment advisors at the Independent Center or at State Voc Rehab or whoever you're working with say, I wouldn't talk about it, that's certainly something that you can think on. Yeah. It took a long time for me to find the first job at UW-Madison. The postdocs at Yale, we just kind of worked out because I was already there, and Yale was deeply committed to me. Okay. And a lot of individuals at Yale were. But to get that first job at UW-Madison, that was, not even really pounding the pavement. In this case, it was connecting to a third cousin who was in Chicago. He knew a professor at UW-Madison who he represented. He's an agent. Yeah. She knew the chancellor, and the chancellor at that time, John Wiley, was totally awesome. And he was the kind of guy who was real creative. And he was just like, if you've done all this stuff, yeah, I'll find a way to use you on this campus. Nice. And that was how that worked. And then he actually was the director of the Wisconsin Institute Singular for Discovery. And so he just decided he wanted me as his associate director because I had a lot of the science background that somebody like that was going to need to help the faculty get settled into this brand new gorgeous building that we had. It's not, I'm not going to go around and say it's an easy thing. It took me 6 years to find that first position, and that was an interim position. It was 2 years, but it was interim. Okay. And the going back to Yale again, that was largely me deciding that was what I was going to do.
Yeah. I was going to say, with that being said, I would like to segue into what drives you. What is pushing Dr. Matthew Weed to accomplish such incredible things?
Well, I for me, it's a lot about I want to do useful things in the world. I don't want to not be a participant effectively. And fortunately, I've had a lot of people, not least of whom is my mother, but still, who have been very supportive of pushing that forward. But I've had to network like crazy to find them. Networking when you are trying to be successful is hugely important. Having those people that you can say, dear so-and-so, I'm looking to do this. Do you know anybody who could help? I have hundreds of those people, but that network has taken a very long time to build up, and I keep building it all the time.
Yeah. So what got you here?
Exactly. Exactly.
Yeah, so Matthew, I must say once again, I am highly impressed with your resume. I've honestly never seen anything like it. And I was just floored. And when you use the term blind, let me ask, do you have any?
No vision.
So no vision. You've done all of this totally.
Yep.
Visionless.
Total blind. Yep.
Yes. So to our listeners, it is very much so possible. It is very possible if you work hard, if you network, and you build a support system, it is very possible for you to go above and beyond the standard that may be placed upon you. Yep. Do you have any questions, Becca?
I'm really interested to find out how you got to the Independence Center. What got you to us?
Well, when I came home in 2016, after the experience out in California, we needed advice on things like Social Security, disability, and things like that. And the Independence Center was kind of the place that everybody pointed us to. We have been kind of in and out of the Independence Center. Sometimes I'm using you guys quite a bit, and sometimes everything's going fine. I don't need to as much. So that was kind of what drew us in. I did do a little talk at the Independence Center in 2016 about having a disability and being successful. And that, I think, helped get me kind of in the minds of some people there, Jeanette Fortin as an example. And so when we realized, as I'm starting to pull my little business really fully together, that we were going to need to talk with people about benefits and things like that, it was a real obvious thing to call you guys and find out that Daniel is the man who knows about those kinds of things.
Yes, he is the man that knows about that stuff. I agree.
I'm shy.
No, you're not. Let's not be coy.
So once again, Matthew, you've brought up another topic that is great to discuss. Is currently, what are you doing currently as far as employment? What are you working on now?
Well, I'm doing the famous self-employed thing. I work with students from the U.S. and from overseas on getting into college and graduate school, mostly medical school, but some other graduate school things as well. And that's kind of a November, December, January activity, a little bit of May for medical school. I'm looking at a lot of people's websites right now to let them know if it's really usable for somebody who is totally blind, because the reality is that the top of Mount Kilimanjaro is accessible. You just have to walk up 2 days on foot.
Right.
So you don't want a website to be like that. And there are way too many websites that are like that.
Right.
So I'm starting to do more and more of that kind of work. I'm working with a college here in town. I work with one of my universities back east a little bit. I'm doing some work with the National Institutes of Health. I'm always looking for more opportunities. And then I was talking about the student home visit thing. We're hoping this summer to maybe start programs at 3 or 4 schools, if everything goes right, where we'll have students going out once a week to check in on on folks to make sure they're doing okay, and then they'll have the ability to report back if they think, oh yeah, Mr. Smith doesn't seem to quite be doing so well this week.
Okay.
It's a great
Because
service.
prevention pays in healthcare. Prevention pays.
Yes, it does.
And now that the Trump administration has given us the ability to pay for some preventative services through Medicare Advantage, that is a big step forward. They've made as many steps backward as they've made forward, but that's one area where they've made a big step forward. Right. And that is going to offer the opportunity to teach a lot of young health professionals about what it's like for their patients outside the clinical setting, which is not exposure they get necessarily in medical school or nursing school or whatever. So if we can pay for this through simply preventing problems, then we're in good shape. And I'm very confident that we can. We just need to actually do the test programming now to get that rolling.
That's exciting.
It is, man. Your ambition is infectious. Like, dude, I'm ready to go. Sign me up for Yale right now. Let's go.
Me too.
Let's go right now. So, as a geneticist,
Yep.
first describe to our listeners what is the role of a geneticist?
Well, most geneticists, I would say, and it was a long time since I did my PhD. Some of this has changed, but most geneticists are trying to understand how our genome, our DNA, works and is regulated, and how genes turn into proteins, which are basically the instructions or the tools that our cells use to do everything. The genes are the instruction manual. So geneticists are really trying to understand the instruction manual. And the more they understand the instruction manual and how it works, when certain instructions are written and when they're not used, that helps us really understand how our bodies work, how our pets' bodies work, how everything
works. All right. And with that, what type of accommodations, if you don't mind me asking, what type of accommodations do you utilize when doing that particular type of work?
If you're in the
science?
lab and you're in science, most geneticists, this was not my path, but most geneticists who say couldn't see would be doing some form of computational genetics. So they would be getting a sequence of a DNA sequence from somebody in their lab or from the NIH or wherever, and they would be able to, have JAWS or VoiceOver or whatever read that sequence to them, and they would analyze it using mathematical and computational tools. If you're in the lab and you can't see, somebody with vision with sight pretty much has to be helping out. You can set up like a gel electrophoresis, which is basically how you measure like how big a protein is or how long a piece of DNA is. You can set up the gel by yourself, and you can put the stuff that you're trying to look at in there, but sooner or later somebody's going to have to read the readout for you. Sooner or later that's going to have to happen, and the reality is somebody who can see can do even those lab steps 20 times faster than somebody who can't.
I got you. So just to wrap up here, once again, thank you for coming in. I want to ask, is there any tips or any advice that you would like to give our young or old listeners with disabilities that are concerned about their ability to overcome some of the roadblocks that may be in the way of them pursuing employment?
Well, I'm going to say two things. One is, if you're concerned, your concern is justified. It's not easy, but it is possible. And that's the thing that you have to remember. But as my mother always said to me when I was a little kid, I was going to have to work at least twice as hard just to keep up. And that, unfortunately, is going to be true for you. But if you're willing to work twice as hard, you can keep up.
Wow.
It is possible. There is it's unfortunate that it's that way. Obviously, for a lot of people with other kinds of disabilities than the ones that I have, as I said before, you can hide it, or you need much less overt accommodation.
Yes.
Most people don't wander around with what look to other people like bodyguards all the time.
Right.
But that's the life situation that I have.
It works for you, right?
Right.
It works for you. So yeah. So ending this, would you like to plug your YouTube page? Or?
Well, if people want to look at my website, it's at www.Dr. Matthew Weed, MatthewWeed, all one word, .com. I did have somebody with site put that together, and I'm told it looks pretty good. We're
Nice.
actually doing an update right now, but still. That is how you can find me and look for me and all the various things that I'm doing.
Well, once again, from the bottom of my heart, on behalf of the Independence Center podcast, we thank you. Thank you so much for being here.
Well, I'm happy to be here and help out any way I can.
Thank you so
right.
much. We appreciate you.
All right, I'm Daniel Ratcliffe,
I'm Rebecca Michael.
and we're signing off.